Hey guys, in this book review I'm going to be talking about The Last American Vampire by Seth Grahame-Smith. The Last American Vampire is the sequel to Seth Grahame-Smith's Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and this follows Henry Sturgis, the vampire who set Abraham Lincoln out on his journey to fight the forces of evil. Often told in a humorous but enlightening way, the story follows Henry through his creation in Roanoke when he became a vampire, all the way through the early days of America, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. He even meets with Jack the Ripper, and continues on into the Electric Age, and then through both world wars and on. And through it all, Henry is on a quest to find an infamous vampire who is set out to destroy America. You guys, I had so much fun with this book. Just so fun from start to finish. Henry Sturgis is just such a likable and intriguing character. But at the same time, he's also a vampire, so he has his frightening moments as well. I was a huge fan of Seth Grahame-Smith's Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Just a really fascinating read, so well done, and it had a lot of great historical context within it, within the whole thing of placing Lincoln as a vampire hunter, even though we know that is all fictional, but it still worked in the confines of the book. And in this book, Henry Sturgis was definitely my favorite character, so I was super excited for Henry to get his own book. So a quick question, should you read this book before you read this book? In my opinion, I think it might help if you do read Abraham Lincoln first, just so you get an idea of who Henry is and Henry's relationship with Lincoln, because that does play a role in this even further. But even in this book, if something is brought up that was in this book, in this one Henry will give you backstory and fill in all the blanks, so you're not ever really confused, I don't think. So yeah, I do recommend reading this first, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary in some ways. I was looking through some reviews on Goodreads, and there were a lot of people who were reading this first for the first time before they ever read this, and they seem to not have a problem. So I guess it just depends on you as the reader if you feel like you're going to be confused or not. A very important thing to note about this book, it has a lot more gore and violence and sex and use of profanity, which in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, you didn't really get much of that. You got the gore and the violence, but you didn't get like the sex and the profanity. So yeah, be warned that this book is much more wild and crazy than Abraham Lincoln, which I think was much more tame in comparison. And also, just like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, The Last American Vampire makes use of footnotes, which are often very hilarious. And sometimes they're actually very fascinating because the footnote will have something to do with history, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I did not actually know that. So yeah, the footnotes are both enlightening and humorous. I did give this book 4 stars on Goodreads, so you may be wondering why didn't I give it 5 stars if I'm raving and loving about it so much. And the thing is, I did have some few minor issues with the book. The thing is, The Last American Vampire covers like over 500 years of history, and this isn't necessarily a big huge book. I think it's only it's almost 400 pages, and yeah, covering 500 years of history. And the thing is also, the way the story is structured, you get like a specific historical event, and then another historical event, and then another historical event. And so Henry is kind of meeting big figures in each of these individual historical eras. And so he has some big involvement in every aspect of history, it seems, which makes it funny at the same time that Henry is the one who actually did this. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say, there would be like a few chapters focused on Henry's involvement with the Jack the Ripper case. Then there would be a few chapters with Henry's involvement with the Russian Revolution, and so on. So in some ways this book reads like a little portfolio of like short stories and short adventures that Henry has had over his long decades as a vampire. So sometimes something very interesting would be going on and you would kind of abruptly be taken out of it, and you would be sitting there thinking, wait, there's something fascinating going on here, go back. But then the story would jump to the next big historical event that Henry's a part of. My other one large complaint with this novel has to do with the villain, and it's incredibly hard not to spoil who the villain is. But like I said in the synopsis, the villain is an infamous vampire that Henry has to track down because this vampire is set out to ruin America. This vampire has some sort of vendetta against America. The thing is, though, the villain, when you get the reveal of who the villain is, it is so genius, so brilliant, so just... you're just left there with your mouth hanging open. So yeah, I loved who the villain was of the book, but the thing is, you're never really given much of a motive for why the villain is doing the things that they're doing. And then yeah, at the end, the villain does give a sort of motive, but at the same time as the reader you're thinking, well, I don't really buy that. I feel like there's something much more deeper going on that's being left unsaid. So yeah, the villain, there was so much potential and so much depth that could have been explored that I felt wasn't explored, which was a shame. But either way, despite my few complaints with this book, like I keep saying, this was so fun from start to finish. A fun protagonist with Henry. And I just love the whole use of Henry, you know, traveling through time and being part of all these major historical events and being friends with these larger-than-life historical figures. So have you guys read The Last American Vampire or even Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter? Do you want to read it? What did you think of it? If you did read it, let me know. And if you want to get into some spoilers, I'll be happy to get into them with you. So that's it for this book review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you liked this book review, you may like these other book reviews. Bye guys.